teaching, and also he's a professional businessman and fund managers and investors, and he is doing many things at the same time. So you can raise very sensitive question, but this is a class, so maybe the general question might be all right. And he actually he knows very much. And after the class, after the lecture, you can raise a very sensitive business question to him. Okay, Mr. Ashok, please.
No problem. We make money other ways. So 4 years ago, I was in Delhi airport, and my visa had expired because I'm American. So American by citizenship, but Indian by birth. So when I wanted to enter Delhi airport, I said, so what? The visa has expired. I'm like, come on, you look at me, I'm Indian. The guy looks at me, says in very hard sort of North Indian accent, sir, you look like Indian, but do not confuse, you're American. So, that's the first time it kind of hit me that we have, of course I'm American, but we have a very different perspective of India than Indians have. You may call me Indian, I look Indian, but a very different perspective of India than Indians have of themselves. For that matter, every single country has a different way of looking at it. There are opportunities and there are risks. We have been extremely bearish on India for 5 years. Don't touch it. It's untouchable, like caste system, you know. One, because the government says something, doesn't do it. Two, because they call them promoters in India. Promoter is a word in India, Indian English, which stands for entrepreneurs, basically large holders of stock of the company. And sometimes these promoters were not truthful. Sometimes they, just like I think China may be worse, but India is equally bad. Third is a lot of execution issues. A lot of execution issues that created problems and therefore a lack of return in time. So people have been very, very bearish on India. I think tide might be turning right now. We are quite excited, and I'll tell you why. I'll also tell you some of the problems we still face. We, in fact, are expanding one of our companies that we own in India, and the response is just unbelievable. It's going through the roof right now. It's a Japanese company, small little company. It's there everywhere. I'll tell you later about it. But let me give you sort of our take, and I will spend only on a few things. It does not cover the whole universe. So first, I think we were talking about power. Power, as most people may or may not realize, is actually there in India. I mean, India has added a lot of power capacity. I think if you look at these numbers, there is sort of 200, these are terawatt hours, so million gigawatt hours, not necessarily the capacity, but how much you actually produce every year. So it's went from 220 to let's call it 200 to 1,000, right? So 5 times in about 15 years, roughly 15, roughly 20 years, right? 25 years, I'm sorry. But it has gone up from 500 to 1,000 in less than about 10 years. So it's done very, very well. That incremental capacity is very good. But as I think Professor Soren Singh was saying, I believe you said that, the coal still accounts for 50-60% of electricity generation. So wrong kind of power is being added, has been added. And big issues in India right now are pollution. It's not yet as crazy as Beijing, but it will be, right? It will be very soon. People know that. Capacity utilization is a big issue in India. In other words, there may be a lot of power, but is it actually being utilized to produce the power? Either because the supplies, fuel is not there, or because the machinery issues. There's several issues, all kinds of issues, right? The big issue right now for other alternative power generation in India is fixed investment cost. So great, everybody is for alternative power, but who's going to bear the cost? Who's going to pay up the money to start? Because by definition, alternative power, any sort of alternative power, your initial investment is quite expensive, and your operating cost is, low. And in case of solar, it's zero, almost zero. So we think there is some tremendous opportunities here. We are literally speaking, we are looking at it, and I will tell you where I think there's opportunities in alternative power generation. The second issue, and this is a topic that is very close to my heart, which is really, if you look at power and say, okay, there are three links. First is generation, second is transmission, and the third one is consumption. Now, transmission is a monopoly in every country and should be a monopoly. Why do you need two different grids, right, in any place? Government should manage it and all that stuff, right? Quasi-government companies. Generation, you have all kinds of companies, all kinds of sources, and there are all kinds of innovations going on and have been going on. What people have really not focused very aggressively on is the consumption side. And by that, what I mean is I don't change your lifestyle, but I will bring down the amount of energy you consume. For example, I lived in New York City for 15 years. New York City is a leaky, I'm talking about Manhattan, is completely leaky when it comes to air conditioning and heating. It spent every single apartment, I'm exaggerating, but not too far from reality. Every single apartment in New York City spends maybe 2 or 3 times as much on a per square meter or per square footage basis compared to what you spend in Japan in terms to maintain 25 degrees Celsius inside. Why? Because older equipment, lack of insulation. In fact, if I can stop there for a second and say insulation by far is the biggest source of problem and opportunity. To give you sort of a simple physics analogy, you take a refrigerator, you chilled your beer or whatever, chilled your water, and if the heat was not going to leak, was not going to get out of the heat was not going to sink into the refrigerator, right? Then the chilled beer would stay at 7 degrees Celsius or 12 degrees Celsius. But there's always a heat loss, right? And therefore, you need to continue to chill the refrigerator. And perfect insulation is impossible, but the closer you get to a perfect insulation situation, the more you save energy. The numbers that are up there are just astounding. This is from Japan Chemical Industry Association. What this does is it says, okay, Japan is going to employ a variety of technologies, and let's imagine in what kind of technologies are going to be employed in 2020 by Japanese industries. A variety of things to reduce power. One is, reduce power consumption or reduce CO2 consumption, rather. I'm sorry. So you go into solar power, wind power, lighter automobiles, lighter aviation equipments, LEDs, all kinds of things. But the impact of insulation is by far the highest, okay? The solar power and all that stuff may get attention, but it's amazing how important insulation is. So, and insulation comes in a variety of ways, variety of ways. It basically means I don't change your lifestyle, but I just change the amount of energy you spend, right? Energy gets created, energy gets lost through heat, primarily. So we think this is a big issue, and simple things like public transportation are big. Public transportation is not a heat issue per se, but public transportation are issues where consumption of energy could be reduced while lifestyle is not affected. Peak power issues, transmission energy losses, So there are various things we think are interesting from business point of view. Let me stop there for a second. What I mean by that is there's too many things in my head, so I'm trying to organize how to put it across. In India, there is a lot of idealism, a lot of talks, right? But finally, what gets paid for is if you provide a solution that is curing an immediate problem, okay? And that immediate problem could be with a government, with a business, or with the consumer. Generally speaking, consumer is better because there are no credit issues. Business is next, and government, most people don't want to touch because they may change their, who knows what they're going to do. Hopefully those things are going to change going forward. So when we look at India, mostly on behalf of foreign companies entering India, including Japanese, we have, talking about SMEs, we arranged about $200 million into 2 SME joint ventures in last 2 years in India from Japan. And we continue to expand one business, as I said, ourselves, and there are 2 other businesses that are sort of about to start. But they're all very focused in addressing a pain. If they're not addressing pain and dependent on government, it just doesn't work. There are 4 or 5 issues we have encountered, and I've just tried to put them across in a puzzle format. One is communication. There is no way we can solve it. Okay, no, in the sense we cannot find a perfect solution for Japanese people to be able to communicate with Indian people. They're just different. Let's just accept it. Okay, let's not play around with it because we have seen it, we have dealt with it. However, what we can do is set the expectation right. Okay, set the expectation right and set, for example, if you say, if an Indian guy, businessman, sends an email to a Japanese businessman, say, it'll be done. The Indian businessman assumes, okay, he will start taking care of it. The Japanese businessman assumes it's already done, prepared and done, right? So the way people communicate and the way people understand are very different. So setting that expectation right with each other from the very beginning is very important, because when people don't like each other, people start developing mistrust. They just don't make the decisions and everything falls apart. Doesn't matter whether on a piece of on paper it looks brilliant, paper looks great, but it's not going to work if there's no trust. And a lot of times trust is broken because of miscommunication. We have seen that happening repeatedly. Second one is technology. Japanese companies, especially SMEs, are still smoking a little dope, pardon my French. They're assuming Japanese technology is the best. That is no longer the case. Japanese technology used to be best, but there are lots and lots of companies that are competing to provide same or similar solution. Chinese are coming up, right? Koreans are already there. Americans and Europeans have been there for a while. Europeans have been absent for some time. So they need to understand, just because they were great doesn't mean they are great today. And the most critical issue is ability to adapt. Just because you have a great solution doesn't mean it's relevant and can be adapted to the situation there. Because all those people care, the only thing those people care is, can I adapt the technology here, and can I expand, and can I make money? Again, I'm strictly speaking from a business perspective here. And third is pricing. Everyone bar none is value conscious. Nobody is looking to sell a Ferrari. They're looking to sell Toyotas. Nobody's looking to sell Ferraris. And Japanese small, medium-sized industries sometimes do not understand how important price is. There are 2 parts to price, actually. A lot of times people get confused about whether it's expensive, cheap, will people buy it, if the price is too high, demand would be low, and so on. That's one part. That's for consumers. The other part is the break-even part, because sometimes the price has a component of initial investment. You know, if you make an initial investment in any business, Indian business owners don't look for 10 years to break even. Maximum, they would say for 2, 3, 4 years to get their money back. And if that path is not clear, they will not form a partnership. They will not move forward. Financial. This is where Chinese play a very good game and Japanese lose out a lot. And the reason for that is a Chinese company, Huawei, for example, will go in and say, hey, I want to sell you my networking gear. But along with them would be ICBC. ICBC would provide the funding. I don't know how they do it inside, but ICBC provides the funding on one hand. Huawei sells the equipment one hand. So the guy on the Indian side borrows at a reasonable interest rate and buys. And it's relatively smooth, relatively fast, relatively easy to understand. In case of Japan, the only institution that has gone out there is JBIC, really, Japan Bank for International Cooperation. But JBIC has a policy of like, okay, I'm going to stay above the fray, you know, I can't really get close to the private companies because then I'll be seen as giving preference to one company over other company. You know, I don't want to give preference to Hitachi over Mitsubishi. So they stay a little bit aloof. And a lot of these banks, whether it's SMBC, Mizuho, or Mitsubishi, they've not been aggressive enough. Maybe they're not government banks, that's why. But they're not. There is a big gap there. The biggest gap, if Japan can solve, Japan will make a killing in India over the next 5-10 years. Will make a killing, absolute killing. The biggest problem in India today is debt. Every single company, well, not the IT companies, but every single company that is an operating business, right, has debt anywhere between 50%, 30, 40, 50% of equity to 200% of equity, right? And these debts are 11 to 15%. So when you're borrowing money at 10, 11, 12, 13, 15%, I don't know what the number is, depends on when you borrowed, how leveraged you were when you borrowed, how can you make money? How can you actually make money and return equity to your investors? Because it's too expensive. Same thing happening in China right now because debt, short-term debts are up to 6-7% now, not 6%, no, 8-9% actually in China already. So China is going to start seeing big problem too soon. So if it's possible, the following model is possible, and we're working on that to see if it actually works or not in practice. Company A likes Company B in India. Company B is in some business, reasonable sized business, $500 million business, but they want to get into another business that could be $2 billion business. So Company A from Japan goes in, partners with Company B. There, if you take a sort of a stream, supply chain, they were here, but they want to go into more value-added part. Japanese company provides technology, capital, equity capital, blah, 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 etc., all kinds of stuff. And then somehow somebody steps in, either a JBIC or a Mitsubishi, provides the funding without the hedge. Hedging means if they're still looking to provide yen loan, and they say, okay, I need to hedge out rupee risk, that adds another 7% cost. To the extent the Japanese company is willing to take the risk of the Japanese business and provide a rupee loan or yen loan, but without the hedging, that would make a complete sea change difference in India. Okay, Japan has a lot of capital, underdeployed capital, but will these underdeployed capital take a rupee risk? Continues to be the question. And will they take that rupee risk alongside a Japanese partner, a company that is making equity investments in India? I am not sure. We're working on it, but if we can pull that off, that would be brilliant. The last part, I think Japanese government has become better at it. 10 years ago, there was like spray and pray approach. Spray and pray approach is They will just do a lot of different things without kind of a absolute goal attached to it. Like, for example, JB. Take another example. Japanese government lent 9 billion out of 19 billion that got spent in Delhi Metro. Very successful story. But the Delhi Metro contract to build us coaches went to Bombardier from Canada, which actually makes the cars in India. Without going into the stories, the whole detail, of course, Japanese government and companies are very, very unhappy about it. But they didn't go through the right process. And Indian government was not necessarily awarding to Bombardier for any specific reason. They would have rather given it to Hitachi or Kawasaki. But the way the things happened, the way the things transpired was basically private sectors. We're not talking to the government sectors. They're not really sensitive and really didn't understand what exactly is the situation at Delhi Metro, right? How do you capture a contract? Forget about the best product. So those are issues that we deal with every day. Cost of doing business in India. So everybody knows what the initial cost is, right? Initial investments, operating costs, those things you know. But there are lots of other things that are unknown in India, and you need to budget for it. And they could technically, they could sort of literally sink your ship if you miss something big and you haven't prepared for it. Labor issues crop up from, especially if you're dealing with infrastructure related stuff. Government license delays is a continuous headache, and that's why a lot of large players have decided to wait and see if the current government is going to be replaced by a conservative government, which is, who knows if Modi is going to be the prime minister or not. And then hopefully things are going to be, more expedited. Customs and taxes. Let me give you a simple example. Brilliant. It just bugs my mind. We are facing with it. Okay, Japan and India have signed an economic partnership agreement. I'm sure everybody knows about it, right? Okay. So what does that mean? That means there are 20 categories. I'm just making up. Let's say 20 categories. 20 categories. Each category has a duty in it, basic duty. So its duty starts from 15% to, let's say, 10%. And over 5-10 years, those duties are supposed to go down to 4%, 3%, 0. Wow, brilliant. Japan and India have signed EPA. The duties are going to go on. Free trade agreement. Brilliant. When you ship the good today, so on paper, let's say the tax was 10%. Now it's 4%, right? Great. You ship the product from Japan, arrives in India, gets cleared. After customs duty, they stamp something called CVD, countervailing duty. You didn't know about it. That's 15%. Add up 5% to 5 to 15, that's 20%. Then they have cess duty. A bunch of the other things that add up to 23%. So all of a sudden, on your paper that you thought the duty, basic duty, was 10%, and now it's 5% because of economic partnership agreement between India and Japan, becomes 25% in reality. So all your calculations, remember Japan is expensive, so your cost of production is expensive, so all the calculations go haywire, right? And so there is so many hidden costs in India that is that businesses need to be aware of, okay, and need to figure out how to get out of it, right? Enforcing agreement actually is less of an issue in India, more of an issue in China. However, I must say, I'm not sure how many people have heard about Aam Aadmi Party, which is a party for common people. Aam Aadmi in Hindi means common people. So this is a party that was created by some alumni from my school, Indian Institute of Technology, but some relatively, I'm not sure how to characterize them, but business people are really scared of this party. This party has come out and essentially conveyed the message to business people outside of India that we will be ready to change the agreement. Even if you signed simple things like you own a power plant, you have a power purchasing agreement, but for some reason, if we can figure out the power purchasing agreement was signed incorrectly, wrongfully, then we will just rewrite it. So from outside investors' perspective, they don't know whether They will rewrite this one or that one, or they will rewrite everything to satisfy the populace. Populace meaning the people who are voting them. So there is enforcing agreement could be an issue in India going forward if the government starts changing existing agreements. Supply chain is a big issue. Everybody knows that. Leaky transportation, just bad roads. You can't really, but it's getting better. One thing most people don't realize is wear and tear. Wear and tear in India is just unbelievable. Just look at, I'll give you two simple examples, easy to verify. One is the Delhi airport. When the Delhi airport was created, they call it T3 in India. It was opened, what, 3-4 years ago? 4 years ago, something like that. Let's call it 4 years ago. 4 years ago, spanking new airport, beautiful airport, great looking. I arrived there, I was like, wow, India has changed. You go there today, carpets are dirty. Nobody cleans. Walls are dirty, right? Walls are dirty meaning there's somebody has just paper falling off, everything. It's not maintained. Same thing with Air India, the national carrier. Air India is a one of the youngest airlines in India today in terms of the age of the aircraft. Nobody knows that. It's one of the youngest because they just overhauled. They just bought a lot of airplanes from Boeing, a lot of 777s. Get into any Air India 777 flight from Tokyo to Delhi. The seats are falling apart. So that whole attitude of lack of maintenance, okay, for business people going from outside and just looking at whether it's buildings, roads, or existing facilities that are built, the lack of maintenance is a huge issue in India, and the wear and tear is a huge issue. It's getting better, but as business people, we need to be extremely careful about it. We need to kind of know that what's going to last for 20 years in Japan is not going to last for 20 years in India. And it's going to have additional expenses. So those are my sort of concerns I mentioned. But here's what I think. The next 10 years of growth in India could be equal to the last 10 years of growth in China. We're actually very, very, very excited about India today. We think it's at the bottom. We like the bottom, of course, as investors, right? Because a lot of things are changing because the pain is unbearable. A lot of the debt, start with debt situation. We couldn't, 5 years ago, we've invested about $100 million from last fund in India, but they didn't made some money, lost some money. Very, very difficult to negotiate with promoters. Promoters, as I said, are people who are entrepreneurs, right? They call them promoters in India. But that was the case 5-6 years ago. Much easier now, much easier now, because they're all bar none, they all have debt problems. They're all looking for solutions. So we actually think there are some very, very interesting categories in India. For one is power. We don't like hydro. We don't like wind because I think somebody was talking about hydro issues and relocating people. Hydro has all the issues of power, the water supply. You know, is going to be enough water or not to produce the power, therefore utilization. We don't like wind. Wind has all kinds of issues. Offshore wind is still not completely verified, but love solar. The reason we love solar today, didn't like it yesterday, was the panel prices have collapsed. If the panel prices have collapsed, and there are newer technologies that allows you to produce power in a hotter country like India. There were issues before to produce power in 30 degrees Celsius weather, 35 degrees Celsius weather. So those issues have been resolved. So you can produce power without relying on government subsidy, and profitably. Let me back up. Just like in Japan, in India there is power tariff. So in Japan, the solar power tariff was 42 cents. Now it's 35, 36 cents, and going down every year. The average power, that's per kilowatt hour. The average person pays about 22, 23 yen per kilowatt hour in Japan, which is the most expensive in the world. In India, the average power is about, let's call it 6-7 rupees per kilowatt hour. 6-7 rupees is about 10 yen, 10 yen per kilowatt hour. That's what average person pays. But for solar, you needed something called an REC, Renewable Energy Certificate. So because the costs were higher, initial investment costs were higher, so you needed to get at least 9 rupees per kilowatt hour. Today, you can make money at 7.5 rupees. No subsidies needed, because nobody believes in government subsidies. So there are some very, very large and interesting opportunities coming up in India in solar power. Solar power in Japan, as some of you may or may not know, is gone through the roof in the last 3 years. Went from literally 0 to 20 gigawatt licensed, 3 gigawatt produced. They have not come into production for a variety of reasons here. It costs about $3 million to put up a $2.5 to $2.8 million to put up a solar power plant per megawatt. In India, it's $1 million. Same technology. I'm not talking about cheaper technology, cheaper utilization rate, right? Efficiency rate. So partly because labor is low, labor cost is low, land cost is low, installation cost is low, and if you're closer to the grid and all that stuff. Without going into the detail, this I think is one of the biggest opportunities for investors and for Japanese, both EPC contractors as well as cell manufacturers. Not the big ones though. Food is big. We love food because that's going to be a big problem in India going forward. We like two things we want to focus on: agricultural yield while protecting the soil, because a lot of Indian soil is been subject to both agrochemicals and fertilizer usage and so on. So there's a lot of issues in revitalizing soil and increasing the yield. The second part is branded food. A lot of you will see just sort of give you some perspective. Japan is $5 trillion economy, 70% is consumer, which is $3.5 trillion is consumer economy. China is $7 trillion economy, 30% consumer, $2.1 trillion consumer economy. Japan is by far the largest consumer economy in Asia, accounts for almost 40% of consumer economy in Asia. So there's a lot of companies, but mid-sized companies. When I say mid-sized companies, I'm talking about $500 million to $2-3 billion companies that are producing rice cookies, all kinds of things, soy cakes, and so on. They would love to tap into branded food market, and it's happening. These are SMEs, right? SMEs in the sense Nissin has gone out, Kagome has gone out. So there's a lot of things that are happening. But what they're doing is they will go to a company A. Company A is in soy business, but is producing commodity soy oil. They'll partner with company A, create soy-based branded products, right? Which is a much higher value-added product, but it's private to private enterprise. Avoid governments. Transportation. This is I actually am not very sure. I'm confused about it because it is a big opportunity. But there's so much government licensing, intervention, payment mechanism, all this stuff. There's so much government involved in it, it just scares me. We like heavy industries, actually, and I think you will start seeing some, we are involved in a couple of transactions. You might start seeing more of it. This is, let me define what I mean by that. So in manufacturing, as you might know, there's the whole new concept McKinsey started calling it nearshoring, right, or nextshoring. In other words, you produce the things you don't necessarily produce everything in China and export it to the U.S. You don't necessarily produce everything in U.S. just because the consumers are in the U.S. You produce the appropriate component at the appropriate place. If something is heavy, something is big, something is polluting, something is more expensive to transport, you have to produce it closer to the consumption, right? So there are some interesting, so you may produce the raw steel in China, but the tin plate may be produced in India, right? And there's a lot of interesting sectors that are looking to be established. A lot of interesting companies are being established or assets being purchased and kind of new companies that are being formed. in the heavy industry, both in chemical as well as metal sector. And you'll start seeing, and Japanese have a lot of technology, especially when it comes to the downstream part of it. By downstream meaning the value added segment of it, not the upstream part of it. So, so these are just bios of my. So this is myself, my partner. This Mr. Nakamura was the #2 guy at JFE. He was the vice president at JFE, which is a large steel company, and Natsukawa-san was the joint chief of staff of self-defense force. What do you call it in Japanese? Bakuryocho. And so I'm done.
We have the Q&A after the 3 sessions, but at this moment he can receive the quick questions. Okay. So, is that right?
I just wanted to ask you, how bad is the Chinese debt situation? Because it can affect the whole global trade.
If I knew the answer, I'll be shorting it or going long and sitting in Hawaii. But as much as I can tell, see, the debt situation is bad in local governments, right? And there's shadow debt, right? They will not let it collapse. In fact, they should. What should do? We could argue. They should let a couple of trust banks go, blow up a couple of trust banks, so that you don't deposit in the trust banks anymore. So that it's a lesson learned for individual investors who have deposited in trust banks, assuming these trust banks are safe, right? Because trust banks have gone out and done all kinds of funny deals at the back end, taking money from you. Those are the big sources of problems, right? But I don't think they will let anything collapse. They will sort of slowly start cleaning up the system over a period of time. But for sure, in the short term, medium term, and it's already happening, there will be liquidity crunch and interest rates will continue to rise.
I'm Pavan Kumar. I was want to introduce Indian retail market a little bit, and also what we do and what our plan and I was born in Japan. I have Indian father and Japanese mother, and mostly I'm brought up in Japan. And if you want to interested about my bio, just read there is on your copy. So let me introduce what we do. We are Milano Group and based in India, and we have I'm a CEO of the Spark Partners, which does having a real estate business in Japan, and we have a building and a car park and commercial tenants and also apartments. We're doing business in India, through India and Japan and New Zealand. And this is a Indian company. We have a group company who's running a textile business since 1977, and we have an office in New Delhi and Bangalore and Chennai. And also we have the roofing company, the metal roofing company, and Bangalore, then our site is all over Japan, and our main client is mostly in Japanese company, and also our for factory roofing and the structure, the company since 1996, and also we have the land in Bangalore, Koramangala, which is a pretty posh place in Bangalore, India. And finally, this is in New Zealand. We have a property developer in Auckland and Christchurch and in New Zealand. And what we do is we buy a chunk of land and subdivide into like 60 sections or something. Then we build a commercial building or housing developing. And yearly, we make 50 to 60 homes in New Zealand. And so the service will be the Spark Partner in Japan. We do the operating, the temporary shop and exhibition booth in Tokyo, and also supporting business expansion from world to Japan. And our main client is manufacturers in ASEAN companies, ASEAN like food company, and also the embassy, one of the embassy of the ASEAN. So what we do is like they are keen to open their business into Japan market. So we support them to having a booth at the exhibition and also the temporary like shops and the department store in Ginza or something. Then we operate all the shops, and also we provide them the how the sales goes, how the design of the product goes, and how Japanese people like or not. We will report them by monthly and annual. And also, we do the custom duty and regulation clear and based on the Japanese government rules and the feasibility study in Japan. Our business model is pretty simple. That in the top, the client company and the government, they provide. Obviously, the client company provided us their product like food and drink to us, and the sales marketing fees, because we are selling the foods product from ASEAN on behalf of them. And the brochure preparation fees is like, we do all the translation into English to Japanese. And the government will support us like the PL marketing and also the running a booth. Then what we do is we sell to the B2C business to consumer in Japan, in Tokyo, and the matching with buyers. And our value is very simple. Like what we do is like if the company is not open their business into Japan market from outside Japan, they need to have a partner to run basically they're trying to like put in a booth in the exhibition like FoodX or BFR or Farmers Market, then try to find a B2B client, but they're paying the huge money to the exhibition cost for like 2 days or 4 days. But our service is like we do it for whole year on behalf for them. This is what we do, and our main client is like one of the embassy of ASEAN company, and the retail business into Indian market. This is the overview of the Indian market. The width shows. These width shows the population, and the height shows the household expenditure. So compared to the Japan and the US, width is about double, and the height is about the same. And EU like bigger and smaller. But if you see India and China, like with the population is huge, but the spending is very less. You see, this is Indian market. But if you see the number of the rich and the middle class household, there will be 30% in the future in 2015. This is the estimation from the McKinsey research report, and the number of households will be increasing. The ratio and the number here is already like, this is the number of the 2010, and the rich and middle class household number is already in 3,200. So like compared to Japan, whole Japan household is 5,200. So it's not a bad number, and it's increasing. So what we're trying to do is like sorry? This one? This one's a number household of 2010 and rich. This is a divided a four sector. Rich sector, whose household income is of over 1 million, and middle class is between 200K and 1 million. So there's four sectors, and the number of household is 3,810 household. For the rich, I mean for by sector. So here, and the people in the poverty line is like 114. Yeah. Sorry. This is this is million. All right. Yeah. Million. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So we are trying to. So now as the rich household and the middle class household is growing, and because of the whole population is big, like 10 times more than Japan market, the household number is like expanding. And this is the growing modern retail market. Right now is only like only 7% is a modern retail market. Modern retail is a hypermarket, supermarket, convenience store, shopping mall, so on, the modern one. But right now, Indian modern market is dominated by like Kirana, which is a Papa Mama shop in all over India, which they have the share of the whole market volume of 90%, and the number is like 12 million shops. The small shop is like only 10 square meter. The bigger shop is like 50 square meters, but like they're running in Papa Mama size of business. So now this is not the small number. They are growing like today. They have the modern retail is like almost 10% of the whole market. And this is the hope that right now the premium food market is growing. Like the whole total food grocery market is at 216 billion in 2011 right now, but include in the gourmet food segment, premium quality specialty food is only 960 million. This is only 0.4% of the whole food market, but this figure is not that small. Because this is, for example, Nature's Basket is kind of Seijo Ishii store or Kinokuniya store in Japan. So they're like selling so many imported foods and also premium quality food. And their turnover is 21.8 million. Then compared to the last year, the 1 year before, 55% of growing. So it's rapidly is growing for the premium food market today. So we are planning to open to support the Japanese food company to get into the Indian market, especially the big cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, or Delhi. But as you know, the major barrier of Japanese companies to open their market into Indian market, and it's complicated business customs, this regulation for the foreign investment, and one-time operation for the, you have to have the reliable person to operate all the plans and so on. And also communication, like you need to have a report to the Tokyo head office between the labor in India. So it's like majority of the company is running the business with the local Indian company. This is the key to succeed. And like if our clients wants to succeed in the market, we have to consider not only consumer perspective, it will be the distributor's perspective is very important in India, because they actually selling, and all the retail shop owner or distributor, they have strong power to what they want to sell in the market. So if you have the consumer perspective and the distributor's perspective both in India, then you can lead your business ahead. So this is our business plan in the this year, that we are planning to have our own retail shop in Bangalore first, to lead Japanese food manufacturer, beverage manufacturer people, and the government as well. Yep, this is just still a plan. So if you have any question, or if you have any, yep.
Kumar-san, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I'm curious how you have been successful in building your global network of business matching, business bridging. Is that based on your parent entity, Milano Group's legacy? If so, how could you get access to Milano Group?
No, like we're going to operate a small retail shop in Bangalore. Then we will, like, our client will be the Japanese manufacturer company.
No, then why? You seems to be owner of SME,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
By your side.
Yeah.
Yet you get a global, business market network capability. I'm curious.
Yeah. Yep. So we like this plan is our client is Japanese company, and who was keen to sell their product into the Indian market. So like we have a land property doing business, and the whole network in India and also New Zealand. We already tried to bring the New Zealand organic food from New Zealand to India, and it was the price is a little bit high, but the quality wise, it was quite okay to the clients. I mean the B2B clients like distributor.
You went to, according to your resume,
Yeah.
you went to bachelor program in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Was that the start of getting awareness of global marketing?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. Yeah. And also like I'm focusing on only like organic or premium quality food market in India, because the product price in Japan is not cheap one. I mean the very quality food. So we don't want to sell all the quality food in cheap price. That's why we put the new Japanese like premium food into the premium market in India. Today the premium food market is growing, right? Not like the Godrej Natural Basket and more. And like it's slowly, but it's growing. So we seeking that there has a lot of chance for Japanese people, and already Kagome and like other like huge companies already started the marketing in India. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very quick question. Estimates are that in countries like India,
Yeah.
the malls will saturate at 12 to 15% of consumer service. And the sector which is going to expand is on online.
Yeah.
So your business plan says nothing about online kiosks. Are you not using them?
Right now we have to. We are thinking that we want to sell, the products on cash and carry and like by delivery. Yes, we are trying to do that because we are a newcomer in the market. So we need to improve, our service more to the like what the rich and middle class people wants. Yeah, but right now we pretty much like busy for opening the operating the plant right now. But like the online like EC industry in India is pretty much like booming right now. So like we have to think about for the delivery and get paid. Yeah.
You're planning to set up, is it going to be basically like, limited to food products, the high niche kind of market, and like organic foods and high value added foods and like imported foods?
Right. Yeah. Like imported food market is growing right now, and also like more functional food. I'm seeking like today Indian people started drinking green tea rather than chai, like Indian tea, because of the healthy consciousness people. The number of the people is increasing. So if we drink chai in India, we put so many sugars and very hot, and that's pretty like tasty. But the rich and the middle class people, they don't want to gain a lot, because they want to be smart, more like westernized like mind from like maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, and so many people started buying, running machines inside their house. So like health consciousness is pretty much like started growing. So we would like to capture all those kind of market.
Thank you for your nice talk. How about convenience store market in India? They are growing always, not only in Japan but also in some Asian countries.
there is a convenience stores in India already, but they have a pretty much struggling the more like distribution, because if there is the convenience stores by city, there is not many access, not many the distribute to their all the product merchandise system is still not very good. So but in the modern retail shop, there's so many like results from the survey that they want to pay their like power bill or like electric bill. I mean same stuff, but at the convenience stores. So convenience stores demand is pretty high, but if you see the government regulations, it's still need to grow. I mean, the need to ease more like the regulation. Then if the Japanese famous convenience stores can open their business into Indian market, they'll be more like the accelerate all the convenience stores market.
We actually looked at this market. We have been looking at it. A couple of big issues in India. One is supply chain. So there are only few companies who have centralized supply chain across India. One is a company called Big Bazaar. It's actually called and the producing companies, like the companies who produce, let's say, food, they used to have their own warehouses and so on. They're trying to get out of it. They're trying to give it to the logistics companies, but it hasn't completely been worked out. There are lots and lots of issues around it. Convenience stores in Japan work because they have an extremely tight, unbelievably tight logistics at the back end. If you're buying a ham sandwich versus a lettuce sandwich, they immediately know that. And the next morning, let's say you bought more hams and less lettuce or less egg sandwich. Next morning, more hams show up and less eggs show up. It's run extremely tightly. The inventory is almost nothing. If you look at any of these stores, 7-Eleven, Lawson, and so on, it's still a long way to go. About your online stuff, there's a company called Flipkart in India, which just came up, I guess, I'm going to say 3 years ago. And they started just like Amazon, which is selling books and electric stuff, right? When it's non-perishable, and when the consumer does not need to verify the features by sort of by touching and feeling it. In other words, we want to buy the iPad. You want to go for the cheapest possible way to buy an iPad. So for those kind of items, the Flipkart thing has gone through the roof, and they're doing very, very well. But for perishable items and for things that you wear, like clothes, for example, it still is, it's still a long way to go. Although clothing industry has done very, very well in the U.S. and in Japan as well, and e-commerce. So we're very hopeful. There are payment issues in India. Payment issues, I think you mentioned about it. Yes, there is credit card penetration. Yes, a lot of new sites are accepting credit cards, but still not completely resolved yet. So.
Thank you very Thank you very much. This is a very short question. Actually, I'm interested in the trading the business between India and Japan as well. And then my question is, you writing in this the government commitment, and then actually I have read the embassy of Japan is now supporting the Japanese people to start up something very small shop in India. And then my question is could you tell me a little bit about in detail about how the government is supporting this your business? In this Indian government or Japanese government? Actually, there's no words in slide.
Yeah,
In this,
yep.
in this paper?
Yep. Like I want them to, the Japanese government, like JETRO, to support, the companies in Japan. Then we operate all the shops and things in India. So like we are not like asking the Indian government to support us.
So did you ask them, and what did the JICA trading something help you?
We are going to. This is like still a plan. So yeah.
And concretely, what did they do for you?
Like as long as we are like more like half Japanese capital and half Indian capital, so like we can.
So financial support.
Yeah, pretty much yes. Like then we supported them to open the Chennai like office, and all the Japanese banks is coming from Japan to Chennai and Bangalore. So like we are asking them for the finance more support as well.
What about the matching and introducing somebody to you?
You mean the manufacturer company?
Oh, maybe yes.
Like we have. There's so many like the SMEs company come to us if we can sell these things, or like these things could be like food, or could be like crystal, like vase, or there's so many people come to us they want to like open their business, wide their business into Indian market for sure. So like we are starting from like food, then we are more like started taking other like the art products, so on.
After that discussion and overall general discussion will continue. So I want to make it my presentation very short, in 20 minutes or so. No, I have another. Okay, 20 minutes talk. Today I will talk about Indian pharmaceutical industry, and the reason why I chose this topic is like this. Three political science and foreign policy scholars made a talk this morning and this afternoon. And judging from that speech, I think the combination between Japan and India is very good, and it is a suitable couple. Politically, it is very ideal. But the problem is the relationship in economic activities. It is a little bit behind. So I'm thinking about the same way in terms of the business and in terms of the economic relationship. And other business school professors, I'm studying on pharmaceutical industry in Japan and all over the world, but Indian pharmaceutical industry is very interesting to me because its development is totally different from the rest of the world. And that's why Indian pharmaceutical industry is so important for Indian people and also the rest of the world people. And second issue I want to address is like this. If there is something lacking in the Indian pharmaceutical industry, and if Japanese pharmaceutical industry can complement that kind of the weakness of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, the couple of the Japanese pharmaceutical industries and Indian pharmaceutical industry might be ideal. So that is the second issue I wish to address. And so my conclusion is very tentative, like this. Indian pharmaceutical sector industry is very prominent in the past 20 or 30 years in growth rate or some kind of the penetration to the world market. But it may have the strong weakness. And Japanese pharmaceutical industry can help the weakness of Indian pharmaceutical industry. But it is still very difficult. So I wish to address that kind of the conclusion in this presentation. So strengths of the Indian pharmaceutical industry is there are so many production plants in India, and they count the number more than 2,000 plants of the productions, and it's very amazing. And abundant human resources. India is very famous for the technology in the field of the IT, but also chemical industry and pharmaceutical industry. There are lots of the education and lots of the human resources available. And that is Professor Naidu mentions agriculture and chemical or something else. So might be the good field for the foreign company to invest. And also the efficient producers of the generic drugs. Generic drugs means off-patent drugs, and it's not protected by patent. But, simply said, the Indian makers, the Western large corporation invented the new pharmaceuticals. And if it becomes off patent after 20 years of the patent protection period, all of a sudden lots of companies enter the market to produce that important drugs. So that is called the generic drugs. And Indian pharmaceutical companies are very good at making this kind of the generic drugs with low prices. So that is the strength of the Indian pharmaceutical industry. And they are exporting to other countries, quite a lot of countries, including the United States and Russian or some other countries. And also the Indian people use these generic drugs, and which means Indian people can enjoy the low-priced generic drugs, and it is very inexpensive, and they can afford to buying that kind of the low-priced product, and their health depend on the generic drugs. So that is very good about Indian pharmaceutical sector. But there is one problem at this point, because Western pharmaceutical companies who invested quite a lot of money in R&D, and they are not very happy because of the generic drug made by the Indian companies. So the patent-related issue is very there are so many patent issues, including the Indian pharmaceutical companies and also the Western pharmaceutical companies. So the patent is very important from the point of the Indian pharmaceutical companies. Yes?
Sorry, I'm asking a question in between your lecture.
Yes, sir.
You mean let's say Glaxo, right? So Glaxo is unhappy because the patents of Glaxo are not enforced in India, or because the Indian start manufacturing generic medicine expires? Or?
Yes, and the story is a more subtle situation, but in principle, Glaxo or Western company wish to make money by selling the product with a high price to recover the R&D expense. So
It expires in 20 years.
after, okay, so that is all right after the expiration of the patent. But the problem is the Indian patent system used to, up to 2005, the Indian patent system is a little bit different. It didn't grant any product patent. And it only grants the process and production patent, which means Indian companies can escape from the patent protection. They can copy the patented product in other countries with using the different production method. So
They can only sell it in India. They cannot sell it, for example, if they make a drug that is already patented. They can't create a generic version and sell it in Europe or Japan, right?
it is difficult. But other developing countries like South Africa or Africa continent or other countries, they can export. So that is a situation. And as I mentioned, Indian patent policy has changed according to the WTO. And Indian government should adopt the product patent in 2005, and that is a pressure made by the Western government, and so that is a challenge of the Indian pharmaceutical sector. Gradually, they are focusing on the research and development to produce a new product, but their advantage lies in producing the low-cost generic version of the drugs. So that is a question. And as I mentioned, there's a Japanese challenge, and it is very difficult to penetrate into the Indian market and to set up the good relationship in terms of the business. So Professor Naidu mentioned the infrastructure is one of the promising field, but it's very competitive, and lots of the other countries' companies wish to invest in India. So we wish to find the third way. So that might be the potential might be the pharmaceutical. And is there any complementary relationship in pharmaceutical industry? So that is my question. And my answer is there is some potential, but it's not definitive and good solution at this moment. So that is my tentative answer. And what's wrong is, what is the problem of the Indian pharmaceutical industry is the production process itself may have some kind of the problem at this moment. And 2008, just after the Lehman shock and global financial crisis, at that moment, the largest pharmaceutical company, Ranbaxy, in India, was acquired by Japanese companies, Daiichi Sankyo. At that time, this is widely publicized because the large Japanese companies purchased the largest Indian pharmaceutical companies. And that kind of the combination is supposed to be very good and work very effectively. But after several years, there are two problems. One is the financial performance of the M&A is not large as expected. In that sense, two companies, Ranbaxy and also Daiichi Sankyo, is losing money because of M&A, which means in one index, the two companies are experiencing the low and flat share prices. And second unexpected result is like this. US intervened this field, and Ranbaxy is producing the generic version of the product, and they are exporting to the United States. And there is some kind of a significant conflict of interest between US and Indian companies. And US government regulator, FDA, criticized the process of the Ranbaxy because of some kind of they do not comply with FDA regulation in terms of the production, good manufacturing process. And that is a serious problem for the FDA and Ranbaxy in India. And because of that, Ranbaxy is stopping the production in some plants, and they are refraining from exporting to the product to the United States for some products. So this kind of the thing did happen in 2008. And after the merger, after acquisition by Daiichi and Sankyo, we expected this kind of the question can be cleared in 1 year or so, because that is a complementary relationship. Daiichi Sankyo can provide a good skill and talent to the Ranbaxy, how to clean up the plant and how to make the production process more efficiently. But this kind of question persists more than 5 years, and still their FDA is criticizing the Ranbaxy because of that. So So this kind of the question is very sensitive, but we have to wait and see what's going on. So my
Sorry, one more question.
yes.
I'm a little bit out of touch. Ranback C had problems twice. And most recently last week or two weeks ago.
Lambax is which one?
Ranback C's labs, right? They had one more problem 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes, several weeks ago.
But they're on page 10 of the presentation. There are 5 or 7 large, reasonably large companies.
Yes.
In the revenue-wise. Have any of them had problems too? In recent 1 or 2 years?
What pages?
Page 10. Page 10, you have like 7 companies here, right?
Yes.
7 of them are reasonable sized companies.
No. Ranbaxy is very famous for the generic product producer. And Ranbaxy is criticized by the FDA and not other companies. Other companies may have the different issues, like a patent-related issues.
But the GMP is not an issue with the others except Ranbaxy. Good manufacturing practice.
Not necessarily. There are some small issues, but not like Ranbaxy issues.
So it's not an India problem, it's a Ranbaxy problem.
Yes.
I mean, everybody
Doctor.
will have some problem. And patent issues. That's a separate issue. But manufacturing issues, the other ones don't have problem, right? You're right. It's a Ranbaxy problem.
Okay. So my conclusion is like this. We have to wait and see. But I'm asking the questions. Is that possible to have the good relationship with, in terms of the pharmaceutical relationship between Japan and India? Because there's some kind of the complementary resources available. But the problem is this kind of a question is a worldwide question, also the Indian market questions. And lots of the regulator intervened, Indian regulator intervened. They require the low-priced generic version of the product as much as possible. But other countries and especially the many mega pharma in Western countries do not like the low-priced generic version. And also the production process, the FDA regulator, other regulator, the FDA can intervene. So the situation is very complicated. And the problem of the Daiichi Sankyo at this moment, they wish to save the Ranbaxy's reputation and production process as much as possible. But so far, although Daiichi Sankyo acquired the Ranbaxy, the management is independent, and Ranbaxy is managed by the Indian managers, and Daiichi Sankyo has no power to intervene to the Ranbaxy's management. So that is my tentative question. And the general question I wish to raise is there complementary relationship between the two countries' companies? So that is my presentation. Any questions? Okay. The mic is here.
So regarding patent issue, I'd like to add some information regarding competition. To tell the truth, the competitor of Ranbaxy in patent drug is Eisai, Japanese company. And interesting is that in case of Eisai outsourced clinical development process to Accenture. And clinical development center of Accenture is located in Mumbai, India. So in background, this is a competition between Indian talents.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, because regarding clinical development processes,
Yes.
to get licenses, Indian talents in Accenture contract with Eisai.
Yeah.
So the real talents of Asia is Indian people. On the other hand, Ranbaxy. So Daiichi Sankyo merged with Ranbaxy, and of course, quality products are managed by Indian operation. So something like it's a competition between different countries, but however, common sources common. This is also same situation happening at the global farmers, because most of global farmers outsource critical development or marketing processes to India.
Yes.
So anyway, so India is a key.
Okay, India pharma sector has abundant, well-trained human resources, and they are the other countries' pharmaceutical companies outsourcing the development process and production process as much as possible. So there can be some kind of the conflict among the foreign companies. Okay.
Yes, I'm referring to GMP issue. I don't have any scientific data about the issue, but sounds to me like it is the political issue. Yes, FDA is targeted, has targeted Ranbaxy as a scapegoat because GMP, as I understand, is not concerned with the quality of process itself. It's a a product quality, production quality assurance, because I know my former employer helped the Japanese pharma companies to introduce GMP from FDA. So that's why my former employer got awarded. Merck, Hoffman launched the plants early time in 60s, right? And so, I don't know, probably Sasahara-san say, it's some struggle, and it's somebody, sold the struggle to the FDA, and the FDA targeted the Ranbaxy as, some political way. That's my just guess, but.
There might be some kind of political intention from the U.S. regulator. Do you agree?
That's an interesting explanation of politics. Two things I want to say. One, in generic drugs case, manufacturer is not making huge amounts of profit. It is really sold very cheap in India. So the margins of profit are extremely low. But it is the focus on volumes. Otherwise, it is to make it accessible to people. Second point I want to make is lots of manufacturing and R&D happens in India or likewise in other countries where it is happening because it is cheap. And when the end product is produced in the market, the owner companies wish to price it higher to increase the profit margins, which is where Indian pharmaceutical industry in some ways has rebelled on this issue and has made sure that generic drugs are made available to large number of people at an extremely cheap price.
Okay.
The only last point I wish to make is in other sectors, for example, the popular chains like McDonald's, KFC, Starbucks, if in their business model, they look at the pricing, looking at the country where they're located. So Starbucks coffee in Manhattan and Tokyo, Ginza districts and in New Delhi is not going to be priced same. So why it is that pharmaceutical drugs are supposed to be priced as same? So FDA obviously is driven by politics.
Okay. So that is a typical response.
Actually, they're in fight right now.
Okay.
The Indian government is fighting the FDA right now. There is they apparently what they did at Ranbaxy. I don't know the whole story. They picked on something that is not necessarily material to the GMP, but guess what? You can pick on anything you want. So there is Indian government is fighting with FDA. So there is a lot of tit for tat going on as we speak.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments?
I think basically Japanese pharma companies have good chances in working together with Indians. The problem is who from Japan. You mentioned Daiichi Sankyo. Takeda is, I think, is more looking toward the U.S. and European collaboration. And who else from
As
other
you
than
mentioned, ASI made a production process in India.
SI? Yes.
Okay.
So I think certainly, as you mentioned, the Indian has sufficient, more than sufficient technical efficient about the pharma industry, so it's okay. And so apparently they are moving upstream in R&D in value added new drugs, but
Quite soon.
they need
yes.
collaboration, partners, advanced partner.
Yes.
Probably I hope Japanese pharma companies can be.
But also the European companies or US company can establish a
Right.
good relationship with the Indian companies.
Yes, because
so
there's
not necessarily Japanese.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Generic drugs also have Western alternatives available in India. So if I go to the shop, I can buy the generic drug, but I can buy the same salt of an expensive company.
Okay.
So it's not, India has not closed the shop for those American, Japanese company to go and supply and sell it. But of course, people don't buy it because same drug is available at much cheaper price.
Okay. Okay. So conclude the business part of the sessions. Anything additional comments?
Lots of opportunities, but execution remains challenging. We have a lot. There's a lot more opportunities that we will see in next 5 to 10 years. We have already started seeing it. To put simply, I think Japan doesn't have a great relationship with China and Korea. They're looking at India, politically speaking, in a big way. Everybody knows that. I'm not saying anything most people don't know. Lot of Japanese businesses, SMEs, are looking at India. People are hopeful the political environment in India is going to change very, very soon, in next 3 months. And we are quite hopeful that the growth rate is going to just pick up because there's a lot of pent-up demand. On the healthcare sector, I think the biggest opportunity from our perspective is actually Indian companies buying up Japanese companies, small companies that are Japanese medical. I mean, Professor Anegawa knows this better than anybody else. It's a $100 billion industry, roughly speaking, or $95 billion industry, where I think about 80% is still patented and 20% generic, whereas rest of the world is 60, 70, 80% generic and 20% patented drugs. So, the country is getting older and a lot more expensive. So there's a lot of changes happening right now in terms of how doctors prescribe and so on. And a lot of small companies that have both generic and patented portfolio, but they're small, they can't compete on their own. They could be acquired, just like Lupin did. I think Lupin acquired 2 companies in Japan, right, in 2-3 years ago.
Okay, so today we have the politics and foreign relations and international relationship and also the business. And do you have additional general debate and discussion comments? Anything additional? Okay, it's a Western companies. Ranbaxy, okay, so it depends on the product. In that case, that is I forgot. And several issues. Patent issue is, for example, European companies, Bayer, and one another European companies. Yes, so, there are so many patent-related issues, and most famous one is European companies and Bayer. Yes, and that kind of the patent issue is very tense several years ago. And is that right? Okay. How about the general discussion from morning? Is that all right?
When I was taking one trip to India every year up to 2011, I guess, the most interesting question by Indian, bureaucrat. Actually, he's secretary of India. That means in Japanese, Jikan, Jimujikan. Is that Tanaka-san? Your bureaucrats are more efficient than Indian bureaucrats. Although I say that bureaucracy was invented in UK, United Kingdom, and was perfected here in India. But your bureaucrats are very good, right? But why you have so, politicians much weaker than Indian? That's very interesting question. We did a lot of discussions, but I didn't have right answer.
Okay, so quick comments.
Maybe because bureaucracy is so efficient, politicians don't have to worry about governing the country, so they become less efficient. Okay. There's no question about that. Bureaucracy in Japan, if you really look at, especially starting from, Second World War. I mean, their service to the nation. Now, a lot of people criticize, Japanese bureaucracy is conservative and less flexible. But their service in the past is huge. Anybody who knows about the way Japan recovered, substantial, credit should really go to the bureaucracy, not so much to the politicians. And at least that's my impression.
Okay. Final. Okay, we have done the all part of the forums, and I appreciate your attendance and participation. And this might be the rare opportunity for Keio University and Keio Business School to invite the political scientist and Indian political scientist. And so I thank the three people coming to this forum all the way from India. So thank you very much. And also the content is very important for the business school and Japanese society itself because of the globalization. The last forum we talk about Chinese culture, the relationship between China and Japan and other countries in terms of the culture. So that might be very interesting. And also today we talk about relationship from the Indian perspective towards Japan and China and the Asian countries. So this issue is very important, but Japan is located at the far east of the world, so sometimes we forget the global situation, and especially the South Asian situation is we are lacking in information and understanding. So we should learn from now, and lots of the issue might be raised today. So this is not the end of the discussion, so it's better to restart the issue again. And I ask you to come again within several months or within a couple of years to further our mutual understanding. Thank you very much. 事務的な連絡でよろしいですか。もう落として結構です。